I have a video that I've shared about how to navigate a detangling process. So where to start, how to get into the empathetic listening. Then after the empathetic listening, that comes the point where you're trying to do the bridge building and collaboration. So each child has been listened to by you, you've given them empathy, and if you have two older children, they might have been able to stay in the room, they might have had capacity to sit with unmet needs or to listen openly to an alternative point of view, even though their point of view hasn't been acknowledged yet. So if that's possible, if they've been in the same room and they've heard the other person's story, then you can start to rebuild that gap. They might even have suggestions on their own, but you might be able to see, so you saw the situation like this, and you saw the situation like this. And if they can each see if they can each see the other's humanity, that's where the collaboration can come in. As a parent, I very rarely offer suggestions right off the bat. I try to give them space to come up with their own next steps because I think that's more empowering and it develops those collaboration skills, so then they don't need me to step in as often. But sometimes if I can see that they're really stuck, I might suggest, okay, well, maybe, and keep in mind, this is after empathy has happened. They are both in agreement that they are seeing things from each other's perspectives, and they're ready to start to talk strategies, because sometimes it can take a while to get to that point to talk strategies. So within strategies, I would ask, maybe we could think up 5 possible strategies that we could do to move forward. And at first it can feel really tricky, and you might have a strategy that you think is really great, just do this. And it's okay to suggest it, like give a long pause for them to think. And I often pick a big number like 5, because the first strategy, the first 2 strategies are probably going to be, person A wants to do what person A wanted to do from the beginning, and person B wants to do what person B wanted to do from the beginning. Yes, those are 2 strategies, but I wonder if there's something else that's possible that honors both sides, both needs. So usually 2 strategies are taken up by that. A third strategy is usually one that I really want to win, or I think would be really amazing, and so I say that out loud. But then I challenge us to come up with 2 more possible strategies. And in that space of challenge of 2 more possible strategies, there's usually something that's kind of outlandish, but that's good because they're accessing like that creative place in them. But then, given enough time and, that feeling of alignment, we've got to come up with 5 strategies total, and we've got 3, and then we have this crazy one. And usually there is a strategy that is suggested that's a good starting point. And when you have a good starting point, you know it because person A suggests it, and person B takes it and tweaks it to represent the part that maybe person A didn't understand of their perspective. So it's like a huge breakthrough moment. The real life example that I shared in the previous video was between a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. And I wondered if the 3-year-old perhaps some of her needs were met in her loud, assertive expression. And if that's the case, if the kids have split up and in this case the 3-year-old maybe doesn't even hear the 7-year-old's perspective, you might want to consider, how do we bring them back together so that they can move forward from this. So with older kids, I would probably encourage them to share what they think, like once they're ready, once they've both had that empathetic listening, share what they think the other person didn't understand. And we try to put it into feelings and needs words, which is what I share as part of my connected parenting program. And then in that sharing, that's maybe the first starting point, is just getting everyone on board with listening to one another. With a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old, or really young children, the language of that would have to be very concise and probably quite simple. So when you took the toy and broke it, I felt angry. Really simple maybe. And then maybe the 3-year-old would be like, actually, quite often 3-year-olds are, I found, have been pretty agreeable. They'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to play with it. I wanted it to be my turn. Maybe they'll then explain why they took it, and they're trying to connect and share what their needs were in the moment. And at that point, you might want to help the 7-year-old bridge the gap a little bit. And maybe that would look like, let's see, I wanted my turn to play with it. Maybe the 7-year-old, you could say, did you know that she wanted a turn? You could ask a question to help bridge that understanding. And then maybe the 7-year-old would say, yeah, I did know that you wanted a turn, but I wasn't done playing with it yet. And then you could go, to the 3-year-old. She heard that you wanted a turn. She knew that you wanted a turn, but she wasn't done playing with it yet. And then you could maybe even ask the 7-year-old, did you say to her that you were still having a turn? And then maybe the 7-year-old says, yes, I told her I was not done yet, and I'd tell her when I was done. And then you could turn to the 3-year-old and say, oh, did you hear her say that she wasn't done yet? And that she would tell you when her turn was up and she was ready to give it to you. Yes, I heard, but I wanted it right now. Oh, you wanted it right now. It would have felt so good to have the toy right when you wanted it. Yes. And then you took it, but your sister felt really angry. Yes, she felt really angry. Helping both sides see each other's point of view, that might be the end of it. The needs might be met there. There might not be strategies that you need to do. Or maybe there is. Maybe the 7-year-old says, well, now it's broken. And then you could ask the 7-year-old, like, what would you like to have happen now? And maybe the 7-year-old would have her own suggestion. Maybe the 7-year-old would say, I want some time alone from the 3-year-old so that I can rebuild it with you, or something like that. And then maybe you turn to the 3-year-old and say, okay, your sister wants some help rebuilding it with me. Would you give me 15 minutes to rebuild it? Knowing full well that the 3-year-old doesn't know what 15 minutes are and you might be interrupted, but you're trying. And the point is to be building this capacity for kids to hear one another, understand the other person's perspective, and then trying to create some alignment. So once they understand each other's perspective, it's trying to help them to hold each other's needs and value each other's needs, and see if there are possible solutions that are honoring both sets of needs. It's not always possible, but inviting them in to give that a try will create more alignment. It's so powerful when kids recognize that the other person cares about them and their needs. So it's creating alignment, and it's empowering them to work through something that feels really challenging. I actually think that work of collaboration is some of the best learning that kids can do. Think about a world where everyone was really good at collaborating and finding creative solutions. It would be such a great world. All right, thank you for watching. And if you have another example or a question to follow up, please let me know. I'm so happy to receive questions and comments about this material. Okay, thanks, bye.